Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Fan Appreciation Month here on Reaction and Review. Tonight, guys, I'm taking a look at a Hong Kong martial arts film from 1979. That movie is The Crippled Masters. Now, I'm going to tell you guys, the first time I even found out about this movie, I caught the ending of it on cable. This was years and years ago. In fact, I believe I saw it on TNT, which is back when TNT would, actually run shows that were, or movies or shows that were worth fucking watching. And it was at, I think, like 5 a.m. I caught the last, 5 minutes of it. I saw one guy with no arms and one guy with no legs just continuously beat the ever-loving shit out of some, random dude. I had no context to it, but I was incredibly fascinated just because a guy with no arms and a guy with no legs were basically working together to kick 7 shades of shit out of some random dude. That sounds awesome. Now, I don't know what the context is to that. I don't know a single thing about it. In fact, it took me over a decade to finally figure out what the title was, because they didn't bother to tell us the title when it was running on TNT. But now I finally get to see. In fact, actually, the clip might have been from one of the sequels, but I'm hoping it's from this one. I am incredibly fascinated by this, just, simply on the premise. This thing could very well be really good. However, it also could really suck. I have no idea. And the only way I'm going to find out is if I shut up and I push play, and I'm going to do that right now. So, without further ado, it's time to kick back, relax, and check out The Crippled Masters. Alright, guys. I totally understand that this is petty, but this has been kind of bugging me ever since the movie started. First thing we see is one of our two crippled masters get his arms cut off. I've been waiting for any sort of explanation as to why they decided to cut off his arms. The closest I've gotten is that they turned on him. That really isn't a reason why they cut off his arms. Apparently, it was just one day, fuck you, we're just going to lop off, your arms. I'm kind of hoping that there's a little bit more explanation at some point in the film, but as of right now, they really haven't said anything, and it's kind of bugging me a little. Okay, and while we get no explanation as to why one guy got his arms cut off, the other guy had acid dumped on his legs, that way they're all withered and, useless, because he knows too much. Knows too much about what? I don't know, but at least they gave an explanation for him. So hopefully at some point I'll learn why they cut the other guy's arms off. It's still kind of bugging me, guys, alright? It just sort of is. Okay, that is really fucking cool. This guy is able to twirl that bamboo staff using just the little, stub he has for a left arm. That is really fucking impressive, guys. That is awesome. Hang on. This is sort of bothering me a little bit. So apparently, the Master is one of the most evil human beings in the world. And yet, he knows exactly which 2 people he crippled that are fucking with everything he does. If he honestly is so evil and he's so heartless and this and that, don't you really think there'd be more than just 2 people who've been permanently crippled by his evil tendencies? I don't know. It just seems a little off to me that he knows exactly the 2 cripples who are fucking with his plans. You know what I mean? Well, guys, I am able to say this. I do really have to applaud this movie's choreography. I'm talking about their fight choreography. This is some really good stuff. It's just sort of a pity that it's kind of ruined by the sound mix, but I'll cover that when the movie's done. Okay, that was a very strange way for the movie to end. Ends with a freeze frame of the villain falling over dead. I do not remember that when I watched this so many, or rather when I caught the ending so many years ago. But then again, I also don't really remember a whole lot about the ending. I actually thought it had a actual ending. But anyway, that was the that was the Crippled Masters, and thankfully, because this movie doesn't have any closing credits, I don't have to shut it off. I'm just staring at the DVD menu. Anyway, let's talk about the movie. First thing I want to talk about, and I normally don't talk about this until way later in these reviews, but I want to talk about the sound mix, because you see, there is something I've noticed with a whole lot of martial arts films that I've seen that came out in the 70s, 80s, and even a few of them that came out in the way early 90s. And it has to do with the sound mix. For whatever reason, and I don't know if these were in the films originally and they just sort of carried over when they dubbed it in English, or if this was something that was just done for the English dub for whatever god-awful reason might have popped into somebody's head. But the sound mix on a lot of these is just awful. And I'm talking about during the fights. Because you see, this movie's got some fantastic fight, choreography, and I'm going to get into that in just a moment. But you see, during the fights themselves, like essentially the Foley artists, for whatever reason, believe that every single piece of body-on-body contact makes exactly 3 noises, and all of them are just basic variations on slapping or snapping sounds. And mind you, that is totally fine if they are willing to mix it up. The problem, at least with this film especially, is that you will see a fight scene where you hear the exact same punch sound for everything from a punch, a slap, a kick, a stomp, or even just a fighter resting their foot on the face of somebody else. Not even fucking stomping, just basically gently setting it down. You hear this very loud snap the moment that the foot hits. It's very weird, it's very, very off-putting, and it could very well be a huge turnoff for a ton of people. Now, mind you, I honestly am kind of used to it because I've seen a lot of these older, martial arts films, and for whatever baffling reason, they almost all seem to have this, problem. So, I was kind of used to it. However, here, it's actually a little bit worse than most other cases. So I just wanted to make that point real, real clear. Oh, and also, every single time that a person is going into various poses for their various martial arts stances, every single person's clothing makes the exact same ruffling sound when they're moving a leg, moving an arm, or even just kind of sort of straightening out their shirt. It makes the exact same noise. Again, that is just part of a rather poor sound mix, and I have no earthly clue if that was the way it was when this film was originally made in 1979, or if that happened when they decided to dub it into English. And while I'm on the subject of that, I'm going to talk about acting. This, DVD, it does not have a subtitled version of the film. We are stuck with a dub that's probably about 30 years old, and I'm taking a real generous estimate on that. It's probably a little bit older. And the problem with those older dubs is, well, first of all, almost none of them were actually made in a country that natively speaks English. Most of them were dubbed directly in Hong Kong or directly in China, Indonesia. They were dubbed essentially in-house. And because of that, you will notice a whole lot of these older films have absolutely atrocious English dubs, where we have acting that is just horribly wooden. We have dialogue that sometimes makes almost zero sense. We actually seem to have very important story points missing because they didn't bother to translate that and put it into the English dub. And all of that is here. We have incredibly wooden acting. We have the story. Bless them, they were trying to make a story, but unfortunately, the way that it was the way that it was translated, a whole lot of it apparently is sort of missing. And mind you, to a lot of people who watch these, that actually is kind of sort of the charm of these things, is the fact that these dubs are just that absolutely god awful. However, I also know some people who they cannot stand a bad English dub. So if you are one of those people where where basically just a questionable dub is going to be a big turnoff for you, you're probably going to want to avoid this. However, though, for everybody else, the movie really isn't too bad. Now, that right there is acting, and again, because I only had a dub available to me, I have no idea how the acting was when this film was first made. I have no earthly clue because, well, once more, we are stuck with the English dub, and the English dub is what it is. And if you are really into kind of awful dubs, then this here is going to be a great thing for you. Otherwise, it would probably be best for you to avoid. Now, that is acting, and I completely skipped past writing. Now, I've already talked about the fact that there are a handful of translation issues that actually kind of sort of leave gaping holes in this story where I honestly found myself kind of sort of, like lost, like lost at times, because it seems almost like because it really seems as if we as viewers were supposed to be told something and we weren't told it. A really good example of this is every fight that we see the villain, the master in, every time anyone hits his back, we just hear this loud metal clanging sound. In fact, that is the only time in these fights where you will see somebody hit, somebody else, and it's not one of those 3 snapping sounds, is whenever they hit the master's back, you just hear this like rather hollow metal clang. And once more, it's the very same metal, like clanging sound, no matter how hard it's hit, where it's hit, or what it's hit with, makes the exact same noise. Again, that's part of the questionable sound mix, but we are never really explained why his back makes that sound when it's struck. We have no idea if he's wearing a back brace. We don't know if his back is actually like made of metal somehow. We don't know if his like back muscles are just so absolutely strong that hitting them is like punching steel. We don't know. Well, it also sort of looks like he has like a hunchback. I don't know if perhaps maybe over in Hong Kong they think that hunchbacks are made of steel. I don't know. I have no clue. And we are never given any kind of explanation behind that. We also are never told why one of our 2 leads has his, arms chopped off, and the guy who gets his legs melted with acid. The only thing which we're told is that he knows too much. Too much about what? I don't know. I can only assume he knew too much, possibly about the 7 Jade Horses, which became a plot point like 3/4 of the way into the film, when they actually remembered, oh yeah, we have to have some kind of a conflict, because apparently two guys who have been horribly crippled who are seeking vengeance is just not enough of a plot. We need to work in something else. The writing here, at least when it was translated, is certainly a little bit on the questionable side, but I do have to at least applaud them for trying to work in a story. And it starts off as just basically a story about 2 guys who are, out for vengeance, and then like I said, they then basically just sort of like randomly pitch in this thing about these correction, I believe it actually was 8 Jade Horse statues. All of them are only about like this big. And it's like, that right there was like brought in like all of a sudden, and when I first heard mention of it, I was wondering where the hell they came from, because we didn't hear word, one about them for 3/4 of the movie, and now suddenly they are the most important plot point of the film. It probably is all just a problem involving the translation. However, it is also very easy to look past all of that and still see a somewhat solid story here. So I mean, we do have that. Writing here is kind of sort of a mixed bag, and I'm going to blame almost all of it on a really bad English translation. So, acting here, it's your standard dub acting from the late 70s and early 80s. Writing here, again, just matter of probably just a big translation issue. I want to talk about the fight choreography, because guys, that right there is where this movie absolutely shines, especially with our 2 leads, who yes they are both crippled. One of them only has really just basically like a stub for a left arm, and and really has nothing else in terms of arms. The other guy has legs that are absolutely functional, and so they had to make fight scenes that worked with that. And so the fight scenes in which have to do with our two leads play up incredibly to their strengths, and they play up to what they can and cannot do. And the fight scenes everywhere in this film are just amazing. They really are some of the best I've seen from martial arts films from this era, not counting films starring Bruce Lee. This is some of the best. It is fantastic, it is creative, it's different, and I do have to applaud them on that. Once more, I do personally feel that the fight scenes are kind of sort of killed by the awful sound mix. But hey, once more, if all else fails, and if you're watching and it really bothers you, you can just go and mute. You can go mute, the sound, because there's normally nothing else going on except for basically the sound of these three different snapping sounds. The sound of metal if someone hits the master's back. You do not hear dialogue. There is almost no dialogue in these scenes to speak of, and there is zero music during fight scenes. So really, if it's something that truly bothers you, you can just mute. You can just mute the sound until the fight's over. Speaking of music, this film really doesn't have a whole lot of music. However, though, what is there, most of it is really decent. There is one piece of music, though, which plays, and it is the goofiest sounding piece of music they could have possibly picked, and it sounds completely out of place. It sounds just very, very questionable, and it's partially because it's a piece that's played almost entirely with two instruments, and those two instruments are harmonica and xylophone. And when you take those two instruments and you put them together, it just sounds goofy and stupid, and it doesn't really work, especially when you have your two heroes who are trying to stealth into a fortress with that playing in the background. It is probably some of the most out of place music you could have used. And beyond that one piece of music, everything else in here is really good in terms of music. So guys, when all is said and done, am I able to recommend the Crippled Masters? Kinda. I will say this right now. This is certainly an absolutely unique film. And if you are a fan of martial arts films, or if you honestly are just a fan of something that is just incredibly different, this is totally worth checking out. Mind you, now, you really have to sort of look at it from the point of view that it is a martial arts film from the, late 70s, so you have to understand about the dub and the sound mix issues, which were very, very prevalent at that time. However, if you are able to look past those, there is still a certainly watchable movie here, and if you can find it somewhere, by all means, check it out. By all means, guys, if this thing is sitting on YouTube or Netflix or Hulu or something, by all means, check it out. It is totally worth seeing at least once. I'm not totally sure if I could recommend a purchase, though. I'm not really sure if I would watch this, if I would watch this movie a second time, which is sort of why I can't completely say, yes, go out there and buy it. I can say that it is worth watching at least once. I'm not totally sure about watching it a second time, but hey, that is just me. Now, because this is Fan Appreciation Month, Crippled Masters came off the Amazon.com wish list. The person who sent it in is a guy who sent in a lot of movies in the past, and that is Medio. And you can find his YouTube channel at youtube.com/user/MedioSurreal. And dude, thank you, because as I stated way back at the start of this, I watched the last couple of minutes of this when I was about 13, and when it was running on TNT, and I was really fascinated. It took me years to finally figure out the title, and now thanks to you, I finally got to watch the whole thing. Granted, the final product is a massive mixed mixed bag, but I honestly am still happy that I finally got to give it a watch, and I have you to thank for it. Once more, guys, the channel is youtube.com/user/MedioSurreal. Swing over there and check out anything he has, and if you like what you see, sub him. Now, as for me, You know, this right here was really good. I really am gonna just go and try to find another, martial arts movie somewhere in my collection, what few I have. Ricky O. I'm gonna go and watch Ricky O, just because I kind of feel in the mood for a good old-fashioned, really cheesy martial arts film. So yes, guys, with that, we come to the close of another reaction and review. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care, and I will see you all in the near future. Peace.